Hello and welcome to Monday's edition of Cracking the Cryptic, and a real rarity today from Demono, the brilliant constructor behind our April reward puzzle over on Patreon. I am delighted to report that this is not an Everything is Roggen style puzzle. It has a brand new rule set and it has a 100% approval rating on Logic Masters Germany and 5 stars out of 5 for difficulty. So strap yourselves in, this could be a long one. I'm actually delighted to tell you as well that Demono has agreed to produce a constructor video about this puzzle, explaining how he managed to create it. So there is a bit of added pressure on me to actually manage to solve this today, because that video probably will make less sense if very few of you have solved this puzzle. So wish me luck. Anyway, two other things to mention before we kick off. Marge is still finding new puzzles in the quest her late grandfather has set her to find her real inheritance. So this is of course this puzzle here, which you can find over on our Twitter account, which is @CrypticCracking. And if you solve the Sudoku you can find there and figure out one or two other things, it leads you to a video of the late grandfather in which he sends Marge on a quest. Check it out, it's a lot of fun. Where is it all leading? That is the question. We'll have to see. And I'm thrilled to tell you this. We have an amazing treat coming up for anybody who's a patron of the channel as May's monthly reward, which is only a few days away now. The brilliant setter, Matthias Martinka, has set, he set some of my favourite Sudokus I ever solved on the channel, but he has also created a brand new puzzle hunt. It's a hunt that consists of lots of puzzles and Sudokus, and Mark and I have both tested it, and it's just exceptional. The quality of this hunt is absolutely first class, and our plan is to award some of our new merch to the first correct solvers. So anyone who solves it, by the way, anyone who manages to get through it will get a shout out on the channel. It does contain one of the best Sudokus I've ever seen, I will tell you that. So 1st of May, that's something to look forward to. Now, with all that said, let me read you the rules to Demono's puzzle. This one's called Taco. Is it called Taco? It's not called Taco Bell. I think it's called Taco Sandwich. Hang on, I'm just going to check, actually. I need to know what the puzzle's called. Okay. I've checked. It's called... I've checked and I've just forgotten what it's called. It's called... Hang on a minute. 1 second. I keep wanting to call it Taco Sandwich for some reason. It's called Taco Bowl 3 Ring of Fire. So this is the third in a sequence of puzzles that Demono has created with this rule set. I have to say I've not tried the first two puzzles, and I obviously haven't tried this one. So I think the first two are also rated incredibly highly. So if you do enjoy this one, there's two more that you're going to be able to have a go at. Now, these are the rules. Normal Sudoku rules apply. Additionally, when two arrows face each other, they are crusts of a sandwich, i.e. the digits in the crust cells must be the sum of the sandwich, including the crusts in some order. Okay. For example, if there are two arrows with 3 cells between them, let's just find an example of that. Two arrows with, there's two. 2 arrows with 3 cells between them. Two valid solutions could be 7, 4, 8, 6, 2. Let me just look at that. 7, 4, 8, 6, 2. Because either way, the digits 7 plus 4 plus 8 plus 6 plus 2 equal 27. It is true to say that 7 plus 4 plus 8 plus 6 plus 2 equals 27. I see. And then 27 can be made using the 2 crusts of the sandwich. Good grief. Okay, so it's also possible, I see, for this, the 2 and the 7 to be the other way around in this instance. So we've got to make sure that the crusts of the sandwich, in some order, give the total of all the cells in the sandwich and the crusts as well. That sounds absolutely baffling. Anyway, I will try and solve it. Do have a go yourselves. The way to play, as usual, is to click the link under the video. Now I get to play Let's Get Cracking. And I have not got a Scooby-Doo what to do here. Presumably I've got to find taco bowls or sandwiches or whatever we call them, which are close to each other. So I can see I've got 2 close to each other there, 2 close to each other here. Is there any that are just one cell apart. In fact, let me just think about this. 2 there as well. There are a few that are 2. I can't see. No, I can't see any that are just 1. So a 2 cell apart sandwich. What do we know about that? Presumably it's either got to have a teenage total or a 20-something total. Hang on. Let me think. Yeah, it's got to have a 2-digit total because it's got 2 crusts, so it's definitely a 2-digit total. If it's a teenage number, one of the digits will be a 1, and that's going to be yeah, okay. I've done a puzzle that had a similar thing to this recently. If there is a 1 in one of these 2 squares. The interesting thing is that the units digit, so let's imagine this is the units digit, you can see it doesn't really affect the total in a funny way, because whatever I put in this cell, these 3 squares together will always have to add up to 10. So if we put 8 in there, so that we're arguing that this sandwich adds to 18, we can in effect ignore the units digit because it's contributing the 8 to the 18. Those squares would have to add up to 10. So those 2 squares would have to add up to 9. Now, the problem is that this can probably be a 2 as well. So if that's a 2, again, so we're saying it adds to 20-something. So this, let's make that an 8 again. This is contributing itself, so it doesn't matter. Right. This is important because that means we can't have 2 as a crust. Well, we can have 2 in a crust, but you can't have it as the tens digit in the crust of one of these sandwiches, because what do those 2 squares have to add up to? Well, they'd have to add up to 18, because obviously we're saying that this is 28 in this instance. The 8 counts for itself. Those 3 squares have to add up to 20. 20 minus 2 is 18. You cannot make 18 in 2 cells because you can't double the 9. You'll break the rules of Sudoku. So there is a 1 in one of those 2 squares, and that must hold for all arrows that are 2 cells apart. Now I just found some of those. There's another one. Another one. No. There's probably some in the... Hang on a sec. No, there are not. Oh, I've just noticed there's an enormous stretch of arrow going along here. Now that would be useful if this was a diagonal Sudoku and we knew something about that restricted what cells could go along the diagonal, but we don't in this puzzle. So that's probably not where we look next. Now let's have a think about this. So now we've got a whole load of dominoes in this puzzle that have to sum up to 9. That is what I think we've got now, so I am going to highlight them all. You know I need no excuses to colour things in. Because whichever one of these is the 1, it doesn't matter in a way. We know 1 has to contribute to the sum. We know that the units digit adds itself to the sum, so the other 2 cells have to add up to 9. So all those purple dominoes have to add up to 9. Now, what does that mean? That means that I've got an X-wing on. Hang on, look at that. I've got an X-wing on 1s there. So that means that we can't have 1s in any of these squares, which is a little bit interesting. So what do I mean by an X-wing on 1s? Well, if you look at, because I know there's a 1 in one of those 2 squares in column 3 and a 1 in one of those 2 squares in column 7, we can ask an interesting question, which is, you know, if there's only sort of 2 states of the world that can exist, if there's a 1 here in the finished solution, there will have to be a 1 there. And if there's not a 1 here, there will have to be a 1 here, because one of these 2 has to be a 1, and then there'll be a 1 there. So either way, we've found a 1 in... There's got to be a 1 in one of those 2 cells, there's got to be a 1 in one of those 2 squares, so there can't be any more 1s in these rows. I'm not actually seeing that as telling me anything new, though. The other thing I'm noticing is that these arrows, there's a ring of arrows here. A ring, ring of fire. That's why it's called ring of fire, look, because this is a ring in that all of the arrows are pointing around in that rectangle. So it's more like a rectangle of fire. I don't know what that means. Apologies if that's making people frustrated, because there should be some logic I'm picking up from that. Good grief, what on earth am I meant to do now? We shall have a look at one of... It has to be a 1, but the problem is I was thinking whether the fact that there's definitely a 1 in one of either these two positions or these two positions, so each one of these sandwiches here, these, has to have a 1 in one of its positions, but it doesn't have to be a teenage sandwich. It could be it could be 21, for example, and then the tens digit is a 2, so the cells that are not, so imagine this was 21 like this, these 4 squares would have to add up to 20, so those 3 squares would have to add up to 18, which is entirely possible. So you don't, even though there's a 1 in one of those 2 squares there, you don't know whether it's the tens digit. Although, that's interesting. If it is the tens digit, those 3 squares would have to be 2, 3, and 4. Because, yeah, let's just have a think about that for a second. If this was 17, the 7 counts for itself, so these 4 squares have to add up to 10. Deduct the 1, those would have to be adding up to 9. Without a 1, the only way of doing that is 2, 3, and 4. So, if one of these is a teenage total, it is really restricted. I feel like I must be missing something about this puzzle, though, because I don't really know. Have we got any enormous sandwiches, then? We've got... no, hang on, look. There is an enormous sandwich which overlaps with my 1 here. Oh, but the 1 doesn't have to go in the crust. Oh, bobbins. Look, there's an enormous sandwich in this column. So we're using this arrow twice. But because it's used in this total and it's used in this total. But 2 things occur to me about that. The first is that there's no necessity for there to be a 1 in this square. This could be the 1, in which case these have completely free choice. Secondly, if there is a 1 here, there can't be a 1 there. There can't be a 1 there. Right, that is a surprise to me, but it is definitely interesting. How can there be a 1 in this square? Well, the answer is there can't be, because what are we going to put in this square? The first question to ask is, can this be a teenage total? Well, there is a secret. Now, I only tell very special people this secret, but I'm going to tell you guys it. What does this column contain in a correct solution? Well, it contains all of the digits from 1 to 9 once each. Now, those digits add up to 45. So, let's imagine that this is a teenage sum. Let's put the biggest number we can in there. We'll put 9 in. That's telling us those 8 cells sum to 19. So what are we going to put in there? That's right, a 26. That's not going to work. We cannot put 26 into this square. So, it's not possible. If there's a 1 here, it's definitely not a teenage total. So it must be the units total. So what digit are we going to put in here as our tens number? Well, 31 won't work, because this square would have to equal 14 to make the column add up. And 41 won't work, because that will have to be a 4 in order to make the column add up. If we're saying those squares add up to 41, that will have to be a 4 to make 45. So this doesn't work at all, in a good way, because that means this square is just not able to be a 1, and therefore we can place 1 in here. And now our x-wing is unwound. I don't know where my 1's disappeared to, but there was definitely 1's in those two squares a moment ago. That square is no longer a 1, so that means this square must be the 1 in column 3, which means this square is the 1 in column 7, and we are sucking diesel, to borrow a line of duty expression. We don't know where the 1 goes in column 5 still. Right, let's take another stare at this then. So 1 now has to be over there by Sudoku. I've got digits in the grid, which is magnificent. 1 has to be in one of those. If I pencil mark these, I'll forget there's got to be a 1 in one of those two squares in column 5. 1 is quite restricted as well in box. Can that be a 1? Haven't I got the same problem with this being a 1 as I had with this being a 1? Because look at this column. That's another enormous string of digits, so it can't be a teenage total, and again 41 won't work because that will repeat the 4. So in this box here 1 might be restricted. It's got to be not there. Now can this be a 1? If that's a 1, again that can't be a teenage total because I can't make two squares add up to 26 or more. So that can't be 41, that won't work because I'd have to go 1, 3, and that's going to repeat the 1. And if this is 31, they would add up to 14. Now that is possible. Oh dear. Right, so we can't lock 1 out of those squares. 1's in one of those 3 positions, and that doesn't seem to be where we need to look. But right, hang on, there is another of these rings, isn't there? Just noticed it then when I was looking at this column. We know that there was 1 in this column. Now look, here we go. These 4 squares are another of these funny rectangles. Another ring of fire. So what does that mean? That's the question. We have so we know, what do we know? We know the maximum size I can make that square is a 9, which means the maximum size of this, the minimum size of this sum is 36. 36 and 9 is 45. Now the maximum size of the blue squares we can't make them 45 because I can't put 0 here. You can't make them 44 because that will double the 4 in the column. 43 would put a 2 here. That's probably okay. 42 would put a 3 here. And 41 doesn't work because that repeats the 4. 40 doesn't work because you can't use a 0. So alright, okay, so the tens digit is a 4 or a 3. But the problem is, I think that's possible, you know, because if you go, you see, you don't know where any of this goes. If there was a tens digit that's a 4, this square would have to be a 2, 3, or a 4. I'm just trying to understand how it impacts with the row that it's in. If that's a 4, and that's... I'm just going to pencil some stuff in just so I can visualize it a bit more clearly. If that's 42 and this is a 3, that probably doesn't work actually, because what are we going to put into that square now? You can't put 32, you can't put 42, it'll repeat the 3. But the problem is I think we can just swing these numbers round like this. You can, can't you? Now if I make that a 3, I can make that a 2, and I've fixed it. So that's not going to help me. And then this one up here, 42, that could be a 3. Yeah, I can see actually that configuration would, I think, work if I put a 4 here. 3 would go here, 2 would go here, and it might, if it's breaking, it's not clear why, and it's getting very close to bifurcation, which you know I won't abide. So let's backtrack. I can't see why you can't have a 40 total in one of these enormous sums. So we're going to have to look for something else, which is going to be, maybe I can do better with the ones. Or maybe there's some way we can do more with the thing is, once you get to like a 3-cell total, we've already looked at this, but you seem to know a bit less even about what the option is as the tens digit, because the tens digit can be 1 or a 2. I have a bad feeling about this. Okay, so I'm not understanding something here, because I feel I'm sort of wading into a world which is going to be less restricted than the world I was just in. Oh, no, hang on. Let us come back to column 2. I've just noticed I should have obeyed my pencil marks. How could these 3 squares be 2, 3 and 4? The answer is they look like they can be at first blush, but remember my purples have to add up to 9. That's no longer possible if I've gone 2, 3, 4 in that triple. So if you have a 40 total, we know it's 42 or 43. We know that outside the cell that's outside the crust of the sandwich has to be the other 2 or 3. So this would form a 2, 3, 4 triple, and that would be impossible. So in column 2, we know that this is a 30 total, and therefore I can put a 3 in one of those squares. And therefore, this is a 2, 7 or a 4, 5. I'll put it in, why not? 2, 7 or 4, 5 to make this add up to 9. 3. So if this was a 3, this total would be 36, 37, 38 or 39. It would have to be one of those things. Because obviously 35 would leave too much work for this digit to do to get to 45. So this is 36 or higher, which means this square is always taking the balance. So that square is a high digit. That's 6, 7, 8 or 9. Again, there's some weird symmetry here though, isn't there? So whichever one of these is not 3 is 6, 7, 8 or 9. Aha! So there is an X-wing. There is an X-wing on 3s in this puzzle now, in those positions. Why do I think this? Well, it's because whichever one of these is not 3, we know has to be 6, 7, 8 or 9. Now, what can we pair? Let's imagine it's this square. We'll put the 3 in here, and let's think about what this square has to be now. It's got to be 6, 7, 8 or 9, because we know it's got to be 36, 37, 38 or 39. Now, what are we going to pair this with? Well, the critical thing is we cannot pair this with a 4, because that will make the total 46, 47, 48 or 49, and this will have to be negative. So this would have to go with a 3, which would be opposite here. So we're either going to get 3s in those squares, or we're going to get 3s in those squares, depending on which of these squares is the high digit. So let's backtrack a little bit and think about what that means, because Now, if we know that there's an x-wing on 3s, there are no 3s in these cells or these two cells. I can't see what that means. Hang on a second. So you've either got a pair of 3s here. Ah, I've just seen why that's a problem. That's beautiful. Now, is that the same? Ah, right. This is very, very, very clever of Demono. It's it's everything you expect from Demono, but let's have a think about whether it's possible for these two cells to be 3s. Now, the answer is no, because this little cell here has a very interesting property in that it has to be a single digit. Now, I know that sounds like it's facetious, and it is a little bit, but what digit should we put in here? And the answer is it doesn't matter, because those two squares are going to have to be the same number. If we make this 38, we now know this total is 38, so that's got to be a 7 to complete the row. But then exactly the same logic applies in the column. That's a 38 total, so from that point of view, this has to be a 7. And that logic works whatever we put in here. We just adjust those digits, but they're always going to be the same digit. And that's going to break the rules of Sudoku, so we can't do that. So you can't have the 3s opposite one another in those two squares, because it won't work. Now that means those two squares are 3s, and look at how clever this is. You think, oh, well, then we might have the same issue. What about this square? This is common, isn't it? So whatever we put in this square is obviously going to be a common total. It's going to give, so let's imagine this was an 8. Now we've got 38 here and 38 here. But here, the outies are in different boxes of the Sudoku. So in fact, what we've learned now is that those two cells are the same digit. We don't know what this one is. We know it's a 6, 7, 8 or 9. We know this square is a 6, 7, 8 or 9, so it's definitely not a 1, look. But we also know, because this total and this total are adding to the same, the outie here and the outie here must be, yep, you've guessed it, the same number. Now, let me just think about this for a second. So, have we got a similar thing going on here or not? So whatever goes in this square has an outie in that position and that position. So those two cells have to be the same as well. This is getting dramatically complicated all of a sudden. This square has to be a 6, 7, 8 or 9. That's definitely true. And this square, therefore, is also a 6, 7, 8 or 9, because if this is 36, that's got to be a 9. Oh, of course, right. I was just wondering why that symmetry was working, but we can say yeah, this is very interesting. Okay, so let's just have a quick think about this column. Now, we know this column is adding up to 30 something, and the something is given by this digit. So another way of thinking about that is to say those 7 cells therefore must be adding to 30. Now if these 7 cells add to 30, what do those two cells add up to? They must add up to 15. So actually there's some sort of 15 thing going along here. So those two must add up to 15. These two here must add up to 15. Okay, I'm not sure what that means, but it's a thing. So we shall bear in mind the thing and carry on thinking. Now, what does this mean? I can see one of these squares is blue, but that doesn't mean I can rule 9 out from those two squares, because I could still put 9 in here, and that would be fine. That would just be saying this total is 19. These two squares still have to sum up to 9. There's nothing wrong with that. So well, the same thing is true here. Look, one of these squares is red, which is that meant to be telling me something important? I don't know is the answer, I'm afraid. I feel like I've made quite good progress, but I keep hitting these brick walls, so I've got no idea what to do here. Sorry, just give me a second to stare at this and just try and come up with some sort of inspiration as to what I'm meant to do. I've got this X-wing on 3s. Can I do some Sudoku with that somehow? I don't see how immediately, I have to say. That square's got to be a 6, 7, 8 or 9. Ah, there's a minor point, look. Right, yeah. One of these cells is red by the power of Sudoku. Now, red is a high digit. It's 6, 7, 8 or 9. So, is it possible that this 1 is referring to a teenage digit now? So could this, for example, be, I don't know, 18? The answer is no, because if it is 18, these 3 squares have to sum up to 9. And that's impossible if one of the digits is a 6, 7, 8 or 9, because you'll have to repeat the 1 in order to make that work. So what we actually know about this now is that the 1 is the units digit. So doesn't that mean that has to be a 2? It can't be 31. No, it can't be 31. That's just stupid. It can't be 31 because you can't make those 3 squares add up to 27. So this square is a 2, and that's another digit. And these 3 squares now add up to 18 because they add up to, because we know this is a 21 total, the 1 counts for itself, so those 4 squares add up to 20, that's a 2, so those add up to 18. One of them is red, and we can, maybe I'll mark that like that. Or no, I don't feel in the mood for heavy colouring in this puzzle. I think I'm finding it confusing enough. Okay, come on, what does that mean? Those 2 squares now have to be 3, 6 or 4, 5, look, because they have to add up to 9 without using 1 or 2. So now what can we do? 1, I just don't know. Oh, maybe I've got more of a restriction on 1s down here now. Oh, bobbins, look. Earlier on, I think I've worked out this could be a 1, and I think it still can be. If that couldn't be a 1, I'd get a 1 here. How could that be a 1? That could be a 1 if... that can't be 31 anymore. Yeah, how could this be a 1? This can't be a teenage total, because these 2 squares would have to add up to at least 26. So it would have to be 41, which is impossible. You can't make those 1 and 3. Or 31, which is impossible because this square just can't be a 3. This is not a 1. That is a 1. Oh, it does nothing, look. Gets me 1s up there. Gets me a 1 in one of 2 places in box 2. Because of these 1s, so we're not able to place 1s in any of those cells. So now this total here, so if it's a 20 something total, it would have to be Oh, good grief. Right, okay. Let's look at column 8. I didn't see this at all. What can you put as the tens digit in this total? Can you put 20 something in? That's the critical question. You can see if we did, this would have to be the 2. So we're going to try and make this square high enough that we can keep these squares possible. And so what do I mean by that? Well, let's try and put 27 in here. Why is this impossible? Well, if those 7 cells add to 27, those have to add up to 18 to make 45 using our secret, which makes them double 9. That's too high. So we've got to, this total has to be higher than 27. But 28 won't work, because now those two have to add up to 17, which means they'd have to be 8 and 9, repeating the 8. And 29 won't work, because now these have to add up to 16, which means they need to be 9 and 7, and we'll repeat the 9. So, what does all that mean? This is a 30-something total. There's a 3 here, so that's not the 3. This square is a 3, which... So now these squares add up to 30, so those add up to 15 without using a 3 or a 1. So if there was no 2 in this total, this would have to be 4, 5, and 6. 2, when I say 2 in the total, I mean 2 in this string of 3 digits. If there is a 2, 2 would go over here. That looks possible. So this 3 is giving us a 3 in there, which is... hang on, there's no 2 here anymore. So there's no 7 there by logic, because these two add up to 9. There's 3 in this sandwich total, which was 21, wasn't it? So right, hang on a minute. So now there's one of these squares is a 3, and one of them is red. And the other one... So yeah, okay. So there's a 3 in here, and then there's 2 cells that add up to 15, which is either a 6 and a 9 or a 7 and an 8. Now this square can't be a 9, because we need... In fact, this square can't be 8 or 9, because we know this domino adds up to 9 because of the 1 that must exist in one of those 2 squares. So this square has become 3, 6, or 7. Oh, this is beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Right, we can use our domino to its full potency here. Can this string be 3, 6, 9? And the answer is no, because what are you going to put in our bottom domino cell here? Bear in mind these have to add up to 9, so if this is a 3 or a 6, this has to be a 3 or a 6, and you'd have 4 cells in the box that would have to be selected from 3 different digits. That does not work at all. So this square, well, this triple now is definitely 3, and it's 7 and 8, not 6 and 9. Now that means this still can't be 8, because that can't be a 1. This is a 2 or a 6. We know this domino adds up to 9. 3, 7, 8. This is not 7 anymore. This is beautiful, because that's a 4, 5 pair. No, still doesn't open up any channels though. 7, 8. Now we know that red is a 7 or an 8, so this is lovely. Look at this red now. We know that whatever is red ends up in this triple. So it's got to be a 7 or an 8, so it's not a 6 or a 9. Now that also now has to be a 7 or an 8, doesn't it? Because we know those 2 squares together add up to 15, because those have to add up to 30. So now, do I know the same thing about... What's this one? Do I know what this one is? Is this the same as that one? It could be, actually, but I don't think it needs to be. If this was a 6 or a 9, you could put a 6 or a 9 in one of those three and hide a 6 or a 9 in box 9 in that domino. And that would be irritating, but it is possible. So what have I actually learned from this? Have I learned anything really useful or not? The answer is I'm not at all sure I've learned anything useful. Bother. Oh dear. Oh dear, dear, dear. Now, come on. Do I know anything about this now? I've just noticed this one. This is another of these enormous totals. So this has got to have a 3 or a 4 in its tens digit. Now, if it's a 4, well, no, actually, if it's a 3, the 3 would have to go there because it couldn't go here. So one possibility is that this square is a 3, in which case this square would have to be a 6 or a 9. So let's just have, this might be restrictable. So if this is a 3, this has to be a 6 or a 9. Well, to put it a different way, if this is adding to a 30 total, this would have to look like this. And that would have to be a 6 or a 9. Maybe I can stop this being a 1, actually. Maybe that's what I can do. Now, the problem is, what happens if this is adding up to 40 something? What happens if it's adding up to 40 something? If it's adding up to 40 something, is there any restriction on anything? Well, that could be a 4 for certain. This could be a 2. This could... No, that doesn't work. Because that would have to be a 3 here, which it can't be. Hang on, maybe this can't be a 4. If this is a 4, we can't have 41, because that would repeat the 4. You can't have 42, that would put a 3 here. 43 is impossible because this just can't be a 3. This can't be a 4. So this would have to be the 4. And if this is the 4, this can't be a 2, because if it's a 2, that would put a 3 here. So this would have to be 3. And that would be a 2. So doesn't there always have to be a 3 in one of those squares? And doesn't it always have to be here? That's what I'm concluding here. That's really interesting. Do you mind if I just double check the logic there? So obviously there's a 3 in one of these positions if it's a 30-something number. If it's not a 30-something number and it's a 40-something number, the only way you can't put the 4 here because this cannot be a 3. And this cannot be a 3, so you have to put the 4 here, in which case this can't be a 2. It's right, this is always a 3, which is very peculiar. But, the other thing I'm noticing here is that this square cannot ever be a 1. And if that square can't be a 1, that square, look, must be a 1. Now you ask where 1 goes in the bottom row of the grid, because there's only one square available, which is that one, which means that is not a 1. Now we have 4 1s looking into box 5, which means that square is a 1. And we've done... No, we've not done all the ones. We've got a little domino... Well, we've got 2 dominoes left of 1s. This digit is now... I was about to say it's completely unrestricted. That's not strictly true. It's unrestricted in the column, because it's the units digit of its total this way. But we don't know yet about this. There must be a 2 in here, isn't there? Surely there's a 2 in one of those squares, because they can't add up to a 30 number, because you can't make the 3 cells in the middle add up to 27. So There's definitely a 2 in one of those squares. Now, do we know where that goes? The answer is maybe not. Okay, sorry. Now what do we do? This one we also don't know. I don't think we even know, do we? Do we know this, whether this is a teenage number or a 20 number? If it's a 20 number, that has to be a 2, which looks possible. And then those 3 squares would add up to 18. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm getting very, very confused. What about this one? You can't put a 1 in either of those. It's the same logic as this. Yeah, you can't make those add up to 30, so there's definitely a 2 in one of these, which is still not good enough to know. We know it's a 20 total. We know these 3 squares add up to 18, I suppose. Oh, I've just done some, look, Sudoku, 3s. There's got to be a 3 in there. This is 3 and 6. So there's now a 7, look, 7 and 8 must be in these squares. Let's actually pencil mark that. 7s and 8s must be in those squares. Does that matter? Be very nice if this was a 7 or an 8. That would affect the ability of this domino, which must add up to 15 because of the 3 clue. That would force that to be 6 or 9. That's 6 or 9. Hang on a minute, let me just think about this. What I'm wondering is whether you always have to include this 15 total in this sandwich sum. Because if that's the only way that these 2 squares are not in this sandwich sum is if they are in the boundary here. Because they obviously, whatever's in those 2 squares can't go in those 3 squares by Sudoku. So if they're not in the sandwich sum, they have to be here, where they would have to be a 6 or a 9. Now if this is 36, it almost breaks straight away. No, it does break. That's great. Okay, this cannot be a 6. Now can it? Oh, it can't be a 9. Right, there we go. There we go. This domino is in those 4 squares. Because if this is 36, hang on, let me just do this slowly. You can see this domino is either a 7-8 pair or a 6-9 pair. Now if it's a 7-8 pair, you can't put 7-8 here because there's a 7-8 domino at the bottom. So there's definitely a 7 and an 8 in those 4 squares. If this is 6-9, in order for the 6 and the 9 not to be in these 4 squares here, you'd have to put one of them here in the crust of the sandwich. Now, if this is a 36, what do those 3 squares add up to? Well, using the secret, they add up to 9. But they add up to 9 without using a 3. So the only way of doing that is 1, 2, and, you've guessed it, 6. That's broken. That doesn't work. What about 9 here? That would be the other option. Well, 39 here means these squares add up to 6. They'd have to be 1, 2, and 3. That also does not work. So this square is not, well, this square is quite a small number. It's 1, 2, 4, or 5. Now that means these squares have to, this is interesting. These squares have to add up to 27, don't they? Because we know the 30, this is the tens digit. So in other words, those 5 cells add up to 30. So these 4 squares add up to 27. And we know 2 of them add up to 15. Good grief. Right. Okay. So what are these 2 squares? They are not 7 and 8. Because if we have 7 and 8 in 2 of these 4 squares, What do the other two squares have to be to add up to the 12 we need to get to 27? They have to be 3 and 9, and they can't be 3 and 9. So this, I think, is a 6-9 pair. Wow, which is very nice for that cell all of a sudden. Just a second now, let me just think about this. If this is a 6-9 pair, that must mean this square is a 6 or a 9 as is a 6 or a 9 as well, I think. Because we know those two squares together have to add up to 15. Because we know that those squares must add up to 30. So I've got 6, 9 here. I've got 6 and 9 in two of these 4. And the other two have to add up to 12. Oh, so they're either 4, 8 or 5, 7. And we don't know what the order is. So all we've really learnt from this is that this is a 2. If that's a 2, okay. Yes, that's still important. If that's a 2, that has to be a 4. The only way we can have one outie here is if these two add up to 43. So that's got to be a 4. Which... good lord, it doesn't seem to do very much, does it? Okay. So, what on earth does that mean? 2, 3, 4s. Oh dear. I don't know. I actually don't know what that means. Has this 2 done so? Oh, this 2 has got rid of a 2 in that square, look. So we'll certainly take that because we knew one of those had to be a 2. So this square's a 2 now. That 2 is... so that now we know these 3 squares are adding up to 18, but we knew that already. These 2 squares, just to complete column 2, have to add up to 7 or 8. Because they're the only things we've not pencil marked. And we have to take a pause for thought. I wanted this 4 to be powerful, but I don't think it is. This is really harsh, isn't it? Because that felt like quite a big breakthrough. And it doesn't do anything. Oh dear. Can you guys see anything? If you can you use some sort of time machine on osmosis to let my brain in on the secret? Those 3 squares have to add up to 18. So if that's a 3, you've got to have 7, 8 or 6, 9 into those squares. That's a 6, you've got to have 12. It looks all possible, doesn't it? What else have we got to look at? What's going on in this one? This one and this one are either a teenage number. They're not a teenage number anymore because that... yeah, hang on. Look at this. In order for this to be a teenage number, then it doesn't matter what this square is. Let's make it 9, for example, because we're just saying it adds up to 19. The 9 counts for itself. These 4 squares add up to 10. These 3 squares have to be 2, 3 and 4. That square can't be, you've guessed it, 2, 3 or 4. So this doesn't work, and that is something I'm pleased about. So this now must be a 2, because we now know that the only way this works is if it's a 20-something number, which axiomatically makes it 21, which gives us a 2 here. I've seen what it does to this domino, actually. Let me just check. So, yeah, look, but before we get to this domino, Sudoku, of all things, gives me a 2 on that diagonal. There's a 2 in one of those squares. That's going to upset my 2s. I don't know, why have I got a 2 here? I'm not even sure. Oh, it's because of these 2s. Oh, good grief. There's a 2 in one of those 2 squares. Don't know which one. But let's come back here, because I've noticed this domino, which adds up to 9, is not 1, 8, 2, 7 or 4, 5. If we make that 4, 5, we'd have 3 cells in the box that have to be the same. So that's got to be a 3 or a 6. Which, does it matter or not? It does matter, actually. Does that mean I can place 3 in this box? Oh, please let that be the case. I think I can. I think 3 can only go there, which means that square's become a 1, that square becomes a 1. 3, it doesn't seem to do too much more than that. So now there's definitely a 4 and a 5 in this column, which is lovely. We can do more Sudoku. There's a 4, 5 in this column. Where do 4 and 5 go in box 7? That square's the only other cell that can take a 4 and a 5. So now I've got a 4, 5 here, which means these 2 squares are a 6, 9 pair to complete the row. Those 2 squares become 4s and 5s. These 3 squares become 7s, 8s and 9s maybe. But we don't know, well, we know that's not 9. Okay, and we take stock again. And, okay. And now we're back to begging for a digit again. Where is the next place to look in this puzzle? It's a genius puzzle, isn't it? It's just hard. It's very hard to know where to look next. I think I've done quite well though in terms of narrowing down some of these options. Is that got to be a 30 sum? If that's a 23 sum, those would have to add up to 22, which is clearly impossible. So this is a 30 something sum. Which I don't know what that means actually. Do we know what that's meant to be? So if this was 32, they would add to 13. If that was 34, these would add to 11. That might be difficult actually. I don't think you can put 4 here, because I don't see how to make that add up to 11 at first blush, because this square could not be low enough. So that's not 4. If this is 35, these have to add up to 10. That's also impossible. Great. That square is a 2. Which means that square is not a 2. Which means that square is a 2 on my 2 arrow here. That 2 is seeing that square using our old friend Sudoku. That's got to be a 6. That's got to be a 3. 6. So where does 6... Oh, in fact, I could have done this before. Where does 6 go in box 7? It can only go there. Which, lovely, that gives me a 6 and a 9 up here. So 9 now lives in one of those 3 squares. And these squares have got to be 7, 8 or 9 to complete the box. 6, oh no, it's not. It's still not giving up the ghost, believe me. This 4 gives me a 4 and a 5. This square, therefore, must be... Ah, look, this square is a naked single of all things. Because it's got to be from the row, it's got to be 7, 8, and 9. And from the box, it can't be 7 or 8. So that's a 9. That square is not 9. That square is 9. We're sucking on that diesel again. 2. 2 has to go here using Sudoku. This square's got to be 5, I think. We've done great stuff now in the bottom 3 rows of the grid. And keep going, keep going. We can. Those squares have got to be 4, 5 and 6 by the looks of things. So, oh no, oh yeah, look, 6 is therefore in one of those squares. So 6 must be here, 9 must be here. Those squares are now known in the sense they've got to be 2, 7 and 8. The 2 can only go in one of those positions. The 7 and the 8 go in. These squares have got to be 4, 5 and, you've guessed it, 9, which might be important. Do we know how? I've got a 3, 6 pair I've just noticed in row 6. I feel like I've done a lot of the sort of the tacos now. I tell you what though, if I do get through this puzzle, I'm going to be fascinated to know how on earth you set this sort of thing, because it's far from clear to me how you'd go about doing that. Do we know what these squares are? Do we know? Oh, now this is 32, isn't it? So those have to add up to 13 to make 45, which means these add up to 12. Oh, that's absolutely hopeless. So that square there has got to be a 4 or a 5. Oh dear. I've got a 7, 8 pair in this row. Those squares there, they're adding up to 21, aren't they? So we've got, well, the whole thing is adding up to 21. So 21 plus 15 is 36. So these squares have got to add up. Yeah, so they've got to be a 4, 5 pair. Look, that's quite nice, actually. You can't include a 9 in this square, or you'd have to put 0 on the other side of the grid. So this square is a 4 or a 5. That gives me a 4, 5 pair there. These squares are 4, 5 pair here. This is 7, 8 and 9. It's still not done, is it? What have we got? Where's this one going? That's going over to that one. So that one's, this is a 20 total, so these 3 squares are adding up to 18. Which unfortunately I think looks entirely possible. So we're going to have to look somewhere else still. Oh, come on, Simon. Where shall we look next? How long have I had? I've had an hour. That doesn't surprise me. Ah, look. In this row, I've got everything done. Those have got to be 3, 6 and 9. That square is a 9. It's a naked single. That means the 3 and the 6 must go into those squares. Maybe that gives me a little bit more purchase on the central box of the grid. It might do, but if it does, it's not immediately obvious how it does that, is it? What about this column maybe? I need 7s, 8s and 9s. So that, this square can't be a 9. Yeah, that's an interesting question. 9 has to go here in column 4. This has to be a 7 or an 8. This 9 and this 9 means this square's a 9. Which, oh, I keep coming back to the same logic I've already done in my head time after time after time. It's very frustrating. Come on, Simon. Stop being a wally. How do we... Oh, I've got a deadly pattern. That's not good. Oh dear. Oh, maybe it can get resolved by this taco. Otherwise, I've got real problems. Oh dear. Yeah, I think this taco total here could resolve this 3, 6. If it doesn't, I've broken it, which is a very big worry. So, okay, I'm slightly concerned now. How do we finish this off? I've got 7s, 8s, I've got 6s, I've got... Do we know what those 3 squares add up to? Yes, I do. I do know what they are. This is a 20 total. These add up to 18, and there's a 9 in them. And you can't put 1, 2 or 3 in these 2 squares because they're already in the row. This is a 4, 5 pair. Oh, good grief. That feels incredibly important. That square's now got to be a 7 or an 8, I think. that square's become a 6 by our old friend Sudoku. This square is maybe a 7 or an 8, which is completing this total. I've now got a 7-8 pair in this column, which is interesting because that means that square's a 7 or an 8, which means this square has become a 9, which means I think we might have just finished all the 9s in the grid. Let's double click. Yes, we've done the 9s. These two squares are a 4-5 pair. We're going to get this square, which is a 6 now, I think, by Sudoku. This square's a 7 or an 8 by Sudoku. This square must be a 4 or a 5 by Sudoku. I have 4s, 5s and 7s, 8s on the brain now. And I hope I can... How do you solve this then? Is this done now? 29. So again, these are adding up to... Ah, yeah, this is done. This is done because this square can't be a 3 now, because those two would have to add up to 15 and they can't. That is important because that disambiguates this horrible deadly pattern that I was worried about. So now we know... Oh, no, we still don't know which order they go in because they add up to 12, and you can see 4 and 8 and 5 and 7 work perfectly well. Hang on, what have I got? Have I just got... I have just got 4s, 5s, 7s and 8s in the grid. Have I broken? Is this some sort of deadly pattern? Oh, no, 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 no. Oh. I can't see a sandwich I've not used. Oh, no, Simon, you are an idiot. Oh, the diagonal one. Is that... Oh, please. I've not used the diagonal one. I've not used the diagonal one. Oh, thank goodness for that. 9, 9... Sorry, 3, 3, 3... 10, 13. I need 13. I've got 13. I've got 3 more digits, the minimum value of which still trips me over into a 30 total. So we know that this is adding up to 32. Can we use parity then? If we've got 13, we need an odd number. But we don't know if they're different or not. We do know. Actually, we do know they're different. Because if they're the same, look at this. This is absolutely lovely. If these are the same digit, where do you put the digit in box 2 of the grid? The answer? Nowhere. It couldn't go anywhere. If these are both 8, you can't put 8 in. If we make them both 7, you'll have exactly the same problem with 7. So these have to be different digits. Now, if they're different, they are adding up to an odd number, which means this needs to be even to make sure that the parity works. And in fact, we can actually just do the sum. We'll get 13 plus 15 is 28, and we needed 32, so that's confirming that this is a 4. And that, I think, might crack the puzzle. Let us hope so. Hang on a minute. Why doesn't that keep going? Oh, I know why. It's because we actually know those two had to add up to 12, don't we? Because of this total. So let me just double check that. That's 32. Yeah, these are 13, which means now this needs to be a 7. Good Lord, it still isn't absolutely straightforward, is it? Which means that's 8, that's 7. Come on. That's 7, that's 8, that's 8, that's 7. That's 7, that's 8. That's 7, that's 8. This one, yeah, that can get that one. 7s, 8s. 8s and 7s. Now, 4s and 5s. How do they get resolved then? Come on. Oh, it must be this one. Everything is needed. Absolutely everything. So now this is 29. In other words, these are adding up to 18. This has to be a 4. 4, 5. 5, 4. Please keep going now. 5, 4. 5, 4. Ta-da! I think I've done it. Yes. Yes, I'm really proud of that. I know it took me a long time, but it was an incredibly difficult puzzle. I mean, it's 5 stars out of 5, and on Logic Masters Germany, that basically means it's 6 stars out of 6. And And what a great puzzle, and I'm really looking forward. Demono, you said you would. You've got to do it now. You've got to give me a constructor video. Thank you so much for watching. I mean, there's so much cleverness in this puzzle. It beggars belief, really. You have to think about it in new ways. I think I was lucky. I've done a puzzle recently where the units digit can sort of be left out of one of these sums, and you have to think about it in terms of how do you make 20, how do you make 30, how do you make 40 from the options that are left. But that was a stiff test, and we'll be back later with another edition of Cracking the Cryptic. This is my song for the asking. Ask me, I will play. So